Howdy, and welcome back to Plastic Models by Regular Dude. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about the basics of what you need to get started building a model. We'll talk about basic tools and some basic supplies, and I'm talking very basic, but with what I'm going to talk about today, you can build a nice, decent, presentable model. Now, if you have 10 different people and you ask them, what do you need to get started? You'll probably get 10 different answers. This is just my opinion on what you need to get started building a model kit. Everything I'm going to talk about today is available at any hobby store, craft store, art store, and a lot of it's even available at Walmart or a hardware store, building material store, whatever. All this stuff is readily available, easy to get, and unless you live in a really small town, but it's easy to get, and this will get you started. So without further ado, let's start looking at it. Okay, the first thing I want to talk about is obviously you need a place to build your model. Now, some people have a dedicated workspace like a desk or a work table or whatever. Some people don't. It's okay. You can do it at the kitchen table or breakfast counter, whatever. The first thing I'm going to recommend that you need, though, is something like this. This is a cutting mat. It's 12 by 18 cutting mat. They can be found just about anywhere, like I said in my intro to this video. And they're real handy. They're really rigid, yet a little flexible. And they protect whatever surface you're working on, because you definitely don't want to slice a hole in Mama's dining room table. It could get you into trouble. First thing I would suggest is a cutting mat or any other suitable platform in which you can build and paint and so on and so forth. The first tool you're going to need, and is essential in any toolbox, is a hobby knife. This particular hobby knife is a X-Acto brand. It's a number 11 hobby knife with a number 1 blade in it. This is probably the most common blade that's used. They're easy to find. They're inexpensive. You can buy them in packs like this. You have extras on hand, so you always have a nice sharp knife. Okay, so you need a hobby knife. Next, you need tweezers. Tweezers are very good for holding small parts. You know, if you have big sausage hands like I've got, it's nice to have tweezers for getting small parts. That way you can get them right where you need them. You know, you don't have to worry about trying to do it with your fingers. You can get it precisely where it needs to go. It's good for holding stuff when you're painting, so on. So tweezers, you need some tweezers. This one here, I include this in an essential kit, toolkit, because it's so handy. This is a sprue cutter or a side cutter, depending on what you want to call it. And what this is for, it's a cutter. It's very flat on this side and beveled on this side. And what this is good for is cutting the parts off of the plastic sprue or tree, depending on what you want to call it. But this is the sprue here that holds the parts in place. You can take the cutter and get in nice and close, cut your part off, and it leaves a cleaner surface. You just clean it up a little bit with a knife or sandpaper or something. But this is essential. You don't want to be tearing these parts off, because if you do, it can tear the plastic on the actual part. So crucial item here. Next, you'll want some kind of clamps. Now, what I have here are just regular clothespins. These are good for holding parts in place while you're gluing them, especially with clothespins. It's especially good for holding stuff like wings. If you have two portions of wings, you can put them together, clamp them with clamps, and then glue them, cement them, and they'll give you a nice, strong, it'll keep it in place, keep it from moving around while it's curing. So some kind of clamps. I'll talk about more clamps and different types later on. Maybe I'll do another video of like maybe some secondary items you can put into your toolkit that'll help your modeling. But for now, just some kind of clamps. Let's see, next, as far as tools go, I think that's pretty much it for basic tools to get you going. Now, as far as supplies, the first thing you're going to need, obviously, is some kind of plastic cement. Now, this one here, this is Testors plastic cement. It is a liquid. It's like water. And companies like Testors make like a tube. It's almost like a small toothpaste tube or paint tube or something like that, and it's really thick. It's orange and white label. It's really kind of a thick, gooey type of cement, and it's just not really good at all. As a matter of fact, I really can't think of any time you would need that thick glue like that. It takes a long time to cure. It's messy, and a lot of beginners buy it because it's right there in the hobby section usually, at hobby stores or craft stores or whatever, and it just doesn't work very well. Whenever I used to use it when I was much younger, and I discovered it was horrible. But this was the first liquid cement that I used, and it worked really well. It allows you to put the glue exactly where you want, and it doesn't take a whole lot to work. Now, this brand, Testors, usually comes with an applicator in the lid. The applicator was just too big and too coarse for any kind of detail work, so I cut it out. And I use, in place of that, I have a brush. It's got a decent tip. This is a Red Sable brush. It's a nice brush, but it was one that I never used much, so I decided to use it for cement. And whenever you get it dipped into cement, it gives you a nice point, so you can really get the cement where you want it on your parts. And what I've done is I've marked this with some masking tape, so I know this is for cement only and not to use it for painting, because you sure don't want to cross-contaminate your liquids. So you need a brush to apply your cement. Another cement that I like, because it has its applications, is Testors Model Master liquid cement. It's a liquid, but it's a little bit thicker than the other one. So it dries a little bit slower, so it gives you a little bit more time to position a small part. Now, the nice thing about this one is it has a nice metal applicator, and in the package, whenever you buy it, you'll also get 2 of these. It's a very small wire, so you can just insert it in the tip there to clean out any dried cement. So it keeps the nozzle clear. It's really, really handy little thing. But this is nice because, again, you can tilt the applicator, you can get the paint exactly where you need it. It's, like I said, it's a little bit thicker, so you have a little bit more, it has a little bit more time to dry. The next cement, and this is one of my favorites and I use it quite a bit, is Tamiya Extra Thin. There's a number of things I like about this cement. Number one, I like the fact that it's in this large, flat bottle, so it's hard to knock over. You're not going to spill liquid cement everywhere and ruin your project or your countertop. I also like the fact that it has a very nice, small, fine applicator. It's really, really nice. You can really get the cement where you want it, and it's a good quality point, so works really well. And this stuff dries really fast, and it's really nice for stuff that you want to set up quickly. Now, another place that the liquid cements are good, especially this one, is like I was talking earlier about a wing. Once you get your wing together and you clamp it, you can take this cement here, you touch it to the seam, and it will just, capillary action will draw it right through that seam. Then you can just apply it on the edge. It's very thin. You won't have any globbiness, and sometimes you can really just avoid having to do much work on seams as far as smoothing them out. It gives you a nice strong bond, and it looks really, really neat. So this is a really good cement to have. The next one And the only reason I bring this up as a beginner item is because some kits nowadays, even a little more basic kits, can come with brass parts or resin parts, and brass or resin won't adhere to styrene plastic in most model kits with the regular cements, so you'll need something like super glue. Cyanoacrylate, or CA, is what most people call it. That's kind of the generic term for it, but super glue is a popular brand, crazy glue is a popular brand, and the one I use is the liquid. There's some that are a little more gel-like, which gives you a little bit more time to apply it. It's just they're a little thicker, and you got to be careful you don't get too much on your model. But this one's a liquid. This is the one I use a lot. And to use that type of glue, I'll show you another tool that I like to have around. Toothpick, or as our friends outside of the US call them, cocktail sticks. You can buy them in little small handy jars like this that can be used for other stuff. You at the grocery store, anywhere you can find these things. They're cheap, and you can get a whole bunch of them, and they're perfect for applying small amounts of glue, especially the CA glue. You can apply it exactly where you want it with that little small tip. So that's another tool you should use, and it's perfect for applying super glue. You don't want to pour it right out, because if it comes globbing out, you're going to be in big trouble. Okay, so that's the tools, or the adhesives. Now, stopping right there, you can build a really nice kit. It'll just be whatever color the plastic is molded in, and some people are fine with that, and that's the way I used to build models when I was a kid. But to make a model look really nice, you kind of need to add some paint. So next, let's talk about paint. There are basically two different kinds of paint that are really common in building plastic models. There are enamels and there are acrylics. The two enamels that I use, and there's many other brands, but these are the ones I use. There are Testors enamels, just in the regular rectangular bottle, and then there are Testors Model Master enamels. They both work really well. They're both solvent based, so you have to use paint thinner, mineral spirits, something like that, turpentine, something to clean your brushes and to thin the paint. This line right here comes in pretty basic colors, but I like the silver. It works really well. But there's, they come in a whole line of colors. They're just pretty basic. Then you have the Model Masters, which come in a lot of different colors, oftentimes with the number of call-outs that a given country might use for, a particular color they use on an aircraft or whatever. But there's a lot of colors in these, and both of these are readily available. The one drawback to enamel paints, really the only drawback, is the odor of the solvents and the thinners you use to thin it and to clean your brushes. If you're in a well ventilated area, it's not too bad, but some people just don't like the odor, and sometimes Mom will holler at you from the next room. It's like, what are you doing in there? It stinks. So, very good paints, and lots of colors to choose from. Easy to find. The next type of paint is acrylics. Now, these are the two brands of acrylics I use, and there are tons of different brands. These are just the two I use. I really like them. I like how they work, so this is the ones I use. Again, you have Testors Model Master acrylic, and this brand here, which is Vallejo Model Color, another acrylic. These are both really nice, and the nice thing about them is they're water cleanup. You can also use water to thin them. I suggest distilled water. And again, this is one of those things that you ask 10 different people and you'll get 10 different answers. Some use Windex, some use ammonia, all kinds of different things to thin these paints. But for the most part, I use water. The Viejo, if you buy a set of Viejos, sometimes they come with their own thinner. It's kind of a milky looking substance. I do use that to thin this whenever I'm using it. It just doesn't seem to dry out as fast. But you can use water. Big plus to these, water cleanup. Easy to clean up and no odor. So that's really nice, especially if you get into using an airbrush, because that creates a lot of smell if you use the solvent type. But these are the two brands I use. They work really well, and I use both types of paints for different things. And because of that, let's talk about brushes. I have a number of different brushes, and the brushes I like most are Red Sable, which for some crazy reason are getting really hard to find. I can't find them anywhere in town, just plain Red Sable brushes. So I'm gonna have to try some of the acrylic or the synthetics. They're supposed to be as as good, but I'll just have to try them out. But anyway, you want to have a few basic sizes. You'll want to have, like this one here is a 0. It's got a nice small well-shaped tip, and that's pretty crucial. It's better to have this particular size is a 0. I have another one here that is a 10-0, and I'm going to try and get them up close so you can see the difference. Okay, those are pretty small. Hopefully they're coming in clear, but the really small, this 10-0, I've never used it. For the type of work I do, I work mainly in 1/35 scale, sometimes in 1/48, so I really don't have a need to paint things that small. This is generally the smallest I use is a 0, and when you have paint on the tip, it's really sharp, and you can really get in and do some detail work. Another thing is the larger the head, the larger the tip of the brush, the more paint it will hold. So if you have your paint thin properly, it'll flow better, and you don't have to constantly reload your brush. I also have a number 3. This is a little bit larger. This is for painting larger items. Again, nice good tip on it, and that's the most important thing. In a book by Shepard Payne, a renowned master modeler, he said that it is more important to have a larger brush with a nice tip than it is to have a real small brush. If you have a brush with a good tip, you're going to be able to do just about anything you need, even small figures, 1/48 scale, 1/35 scale figures. So you want to get some decent brushes. I would suggest, and for myself, I use a 0, a 2, and a 3 mostly. I do have some larger brushes, but I use them for other things that I'll get into later. And especially if you're going to be brush painting your model, you want some broader heads on them. Now, how that relates to using 2 different kinds of paints is you want to make sure you have 2 sets of brushes. One for the enamels, one for the acrylics, because you don't want to cross-contaminate. So have 2 sets of brushes. That way you can and just mark them somehow. You can mark them with some tape, or maybe paint the end of the handle or whatever, or buy 2 different brands, so that way you know which is which. Okay, so that is painting. Now obviously, if you are painting, you're going to need something to clean your brushes. For the acrylics, I just have a bowl. I'll put some water in it. It's a nice bowl from Williams-Sonoma. Look that up. It's a really nice place. But it's a nice little bowl. Fill it up with water and clean your brushes, whatever. Easy to clean up. For my larger brush, or for my enamel brushes, I have this bottle of thinner. I need to refill it, and I clean it out from time to time. This is one of the oldest items that I have in my model arsenal. This bottle is probably 40 years old. I've been using it for thinner ever since. I think it was a Tester's brand thinner, and the label's long fallen off, and I've just refilled it and refilled it. You can tell by the crusty looking lid on here. I've had it for a while, but I love this bottle. It's perfect size. Then I have a larger bottle or jar for keeping a larger quantity of thinner. All right, so that really is it. That is the basic tools and supplies you'll need to get started to build a decent model. So I think that's it for this time. Next time, I think I am going to talk about the next kit I have lined up and what I have planned for it. Maybe just kind of look at what's in the box, not really do a big review because there's tons of them on the internet. I might point out a few things, but I'm not going to get too detailed. But I'll talk about that kit next time. And I think that'll do it for this episode of Plastic Models with the Regular Dude. Thanks for stopping in, and for those that have subscribed so far, I thank you. I appreciate it, and I hope you'll find this stuff interesting. And feel free to comment in the comments area on YouTube, and I'll see you next time.